So while we may not think of it this way, but skin is actually a single complex organ system that includes not just the organ skin, but all of its derivatives, like skin, hair, nails, sweat, oil glands, wax glands. All of those are going to be found in the integumentary system. Together, these are going to perform a variety of functions, like protection. They're going to form a physical barrier between the contents of the body and foreign bacterial invasion, UV radiation, physical and chemical stress. Also is going to play a very important role in temperature regulation through either sweating or the formation of goosebumps. It's going to help us regulate our temperature. Also, the production of vitamin D. We do know that too much sunshine can lead to cancer or overexposure to UV radiation. However, some exposure can be a very good thing. We rely on our skin to help us produce vitamin D. We have modified cholesterol molecules in the skin's outer layer that can be converted to the molecule vitamin D by exposure to UV radiation. Vitamin D then can travel through the bloodstream to the liver and the kidneys, where it is involved in the absorption of calcium and phosphorus from the food we eat. The final function that we're going to mention in this organ system is that it contains the source for a variety of our senses. Things like touch, pressure, pain receptors. All of these are going to be found in the surface of our skin. So when we're talking about skin, we're going to start off by talking about the structure of skin. Skin is our largest organ and it has 3 different layers. The outermost layer is going to be called the epidermis, epi meaning on or over. This is going to be our thin outermost layer. It's the part that you can touch, is made up primarily of dead skin cells. These dead skin cells are going to be constantly replaced, constantly sloughed off and replaced. In this layer, this layer is constantly growing and dying and sloughing off and being replaced. Yes, so this layer is going to be constantly growing and dying and sloughing off. It's going to be replaced. What sort of cellular activity or what part of the cell cycle would you expect to see a lot of happening here? So what sort of, what cellular process should we expect to see a lot happening in the epidermis? The epidermis is going to consist of several layers of epithelial cells. The deepest layer is going to be, the outer surface is going to be made up of dead skin cells. The deepest layer is going to be composed of rapidly dividing cells. So this is going to ultimately form a very protective barrier for us. We will not find any blood vessels in the outermost layer. The cells are going to receive their nourishment from the dermis, but as they die, they're going to be moving towards the surface. So that bottom layer of cells is going to be undergoing a lot of mitosis to push those new cells up towards the surface. Some of the protective properties come from keratin, which is going to be found heavily in this particular layer. So here we have a section of our skin cells, or this integumentary system. The outermost layer, as we've mentioned, is going to be the epidermis, this outermost layer. So the outer layer is going to be our epidermis, this thick layer up here. We're going to see primarily lots of dead skin cells right here on the surface, and then just below that we're going to see an area of rapidly dividing cells. This is where we're going to see huge amounts of mitosis happening. What you won't find in this layer is blood vessels, or really even nerve endings. Your skin would be way too sensitive if we found too many nerve endings right here at the very outermost surface. The next layer that we're going to talk about is going to be this dermis, or the dermal region, found right in here. The dermis, the next layer down from the epidermal layer is the dermis. This layer is going to be much thicker than the epidermis. It's going to be primarily made of blood vessels, hair follicles, oil glands, sweat glands, sensory structures, and nerve endings, all going to be found in this area. This is the tattoo layer. So this is the layer that does not shed off easily, so the ink is going to remain. If you are receiving a tattoo, the dye is actually being injected right down here into this area. This is why tattoos are so painful. It's because those and can often bleed, is because that the ink is being injected down into this thick dermal layer that is not going to be replaced easily. And so the tattoos will stay somewhat permanent. They will eventually fade over time, but generally speaking, they are permanent down in that layer. We're also going to find, oops, here we go. We're also going to find collagen and elastic fibers in this lower layer. This is going to allow the skin to stretch and return to its original shape. So that's going to be our dermal layer right in here. And you can see all those different structures found there. The next level that we're going to look at is the hypodermis. Hypo meaning below or beneath. So the hypodermis is going to be found just below the dermis. It's also called the subcutaneous level. It's going to be responsible for anchoring the skin to other tissues, tissues of the other organ systems that lie beneath. Its primary goal is going to be, its primary function is going to be protection. It's going to be protection, temperature regulation, fat storage. It's not usually considered part of the skin because it is found below the dermal layer, and it's mostly contains fat tissue, resulting in cushion and insulation. But for our purposes, we are going to include it in this integumentary system. So here we have our dermis, our epidermis, and our hypodermis found right down in here. So the next thing we're going to talk about is that skin color. There are two different factors that come into play when we are determining skin color. Skin color is going to be determined by blood flow and the distribution of melanin. So that blood flow or circulation can contribute to temporary skin color. When there is an abundance of oxygen in the blood vessels flowing through the skin can appear pinkish. Fright can cause temporary stop of blood flow to the skin, causing it to appear paler. So when someone says, hey, you look like you've seen a ghost because you're so pale, or, you know, whatever. Fright or nerves can actually cause all of the blood to drain from the skin or cause a temporary stop of blood flow to the skin. Loss of oxygenation due to cold can also cause the blood vessels to appear darker. This will leave sort of a bluish color to the skin, or a bluish tint to the skin. Then also the distribution and quantity of the pigment melanin can contribute to skin color. Melanin is going to be is produced by melanocytes at the base of the epidermis. There are two forms of melanin that can be produced, and the type that you have is going to be genetically determined. The size and number of pigment granules is also determined genetically. It comes in two forms, a yellow to reddish version, and then also a black to brownish version. Again, these are going to be determined genetically. The ultraviolet radiation of sunlight can cause melanocytes of the skin to increase their production of the pigment melanin. This is going to absorb UV radiation before it can cause damage to the genetic information in the deeper layers of the cells. Too much exposure to UV radiation can cause breakage of your DNA, can lead to mutations, which can also ultimately become cancerous or carcinogenic. So the goal, or the reason why your skin becomes darker when you are tanning, is because your body is desperately trying to keep up with your overexposure of UV radiation, trying to prevent you from burning, trying to prevent you from overexposing yourself to UV radiation. Unfortunately, this protective buildup of melanin is not instantaneous. Just because you go outside doesn't mean that you can suddenly protect yourself from UV radiation. In skin cancer, UV radiation is going to alter the genetic material in skin cells, so the cells grow and divide uncontrollably, leading to tumor formation. So it's very important that you protect yourself. Yes, your body is going to do its best to protect itself by increasing darker pigmentation. However, the best thing you can do for your skin is to protect it either with sunscreen, staying in the shade, dressing in layers to prevent overexposure of UV radiation, or in general, avoiding long exposure to sunlight. All right, and that is it for this section about skin as an overview. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and I'll be happy to explain in a further video or in a discussion group.